Alright guys, so I was playing on my chess on my tablet this morning and up pops a challenge by OT Milker. This is Ed, my student, and he said, I hope to give you a better game this time. Apparently the first time we played I beat him in 8 moves or something like that, but I don't remember that. But anywho, so he's rated 900 now. He's been climbing with the string of wins. And we have the French defense. Okay, and so this is an interesting one. The Queen's Knight comes out. So normally, he's defending a pawn that isn't attacked. So, you know, move 2 is an unusual one. I mean, obviously I play the French a lot. I don't see this move. So d4 would be a lot more typical, grabbing the center. Okay, but there we go. We have the Queen's Knight out. And now I come straight out. So if you see my other video from today, my opponent in that one attacked my knight with his dark squared bishop when my knight was on d2, inviting c3. But here, this is pretty obvious. You know, I'm developing with, I mean, it's not a big threat, but if I capture, then right now white is going to have to double pawns. So we have the other knight out. And of course, I don't capture now. I'm not going to waste my turn eliminating the only piece that I've developed. So now d5, challenging for the center, and the bishop comes out to d3, adding a second defender to this pawn, which it has to be said is only attacked once. I think maybe e2 might be in a better square for that bishop, giving it more scope down here, but we shall see. Okay. Also, it means that white is now ready to castle. I now play a6. Now, what is the... I now play a6. Now, what is the purpose of this move? Well, my intention is to... What am I thinking? c5... c4, something like that. But I want to stop the knight from coming here. Okay, and I feel like I'm doing quite well on this. Oh yeah, no, this is the idea, right? So I think I want to play d4. But if I play d4 at this point in time, the knight can simply jump here. Okay, which is a decent square for the knight, or the bishop can go there with check. Right. Having said that, I could block that, but for some reason I decide to play a6 now. Let's see how it pans out. And I remember being quite proud of the move, but I can't quite remember why I played it at the time. So I can push this. Now currently the knight can't go there or there, so it would only have to go there, which would be in its own way, or here. And then I guess I might even have b5. So let's see how it pans out. Okay, so he attacks my bishop and I counterattack his knight. Because I figure that pawn takes bishop, pawn takes knight. Okay, and now if he's going to recapture this pawn, he's going to mess up his own pawns. Okay. Okay, so we have a broken pawn structure, but he is up a pawn at this point in time. Okay, so we never really resolved the mystery of a6. I'm sure there's a very clever reason why I played it. Okay, and now b5 is played. So my opponent's got this developed light squared bishop, and I just want to cut down the options of that bishop. Right. Also, this move enables this bishop to b7, putting it on the long diagonal, the longest diagonal, right across the board, because the bishop doesn't really want to come here, blocking the queen and just looking at its own pawns. That would be pointless, right? Much better to be here, looking at white pieces. Okay, so now bishop comes to a3. Now I think this is a mistake. Again, I mean, this bishop has just moved to a square where it has no prospects whatsoever. Here, again, I think could have been better, putting it on the long diagonal, right? And then when this pawn moves, this is a natural pawn break. He's got white's got 2 pawns on the c file, so he's got really a spare. Okay, so we can push this at any time and exchange for the bishop possibly, in which case this bishop on here would be far, far more effective looking down here. Okay, so this bishop is now awkwardly placed for a while. So now I castle, queen comes out to e2, but again, looking at these bishops, you know, this bishop doesn't have a future. It can't go there, it can't go there. This bishop's actually now completely trapped. It hasn't got any squares to go to, in fact. And this bishop, all it can do is patrol this little corner, right? And it's not going to cause any harm to anybody right now. It really is toothless. So I put my bishop now on the long diagonal, and we have knight to d4. So now I bring out my knight. I'm quite happy if everyone wants to trade knights, that will suit me, because the difference here is he's got two bishops, right? But they're both neutered right now. Okay, I've got two knights. So when you look at the imbalances of the game, I'm stronger in knights, I'm weaker in bishops. However, Ed's bishops are pretty poor. So trading knights right now I think would be fine, because this knight came from here, right? This is the important defensive position for the knight. So normally I try to keep my knight here, right? Having your three pawns around your king and the knight pretty solid. So this knight should only come into attack when you think you've got a convincing attack. Okay, so now this is an error. This is an error on my opponent's part. And I actually put in the chat, you know, Ben Feingold says, never play f3, right? So he's just moved the forget about it pawn, which is important defender of the king when it's on its home square on e1, but it's also an important protector here. So I've just said keeping these three pawns tight and close to your king, where the king can defend them. So if one of these pawns is captured, the king can recapture, okay? Now, this has just opened up a beautiful long diagonal towards the king. Now, to be fair, black doesn't have a dark squared bishop, so how bad is it? But it loses the pawn, okay? White's a pawn up right now, but now knight takes, and if pawn takes, queen takes with check. Now, it's not really a fork on this rook, because these rooks are now connected, so that's not really a threat. So I think pawn should have taken the knight at this point in time. However, for some reason, he decided not to, and I get to retreat my knight. So now I've just won a knight, and I'm up in material. So bishop now retreats to e2, which is actually the square where I said it should have gone in the first place. Okay, and now knight to e5. So what I'm trying to do, I mean, I could put my knight here, bit of an outpost there possibly, but generally just wanting my knights to creep towards my enemy's position. We now have d4, and I put my knight here. Okay, so we may have a trade bishop for knight, in which case I'll get a pawn here that's really making life difficult for these guys. On the other hand as well, though, if bishop takes and pawn recaptures, which is actually what happens, right? It does actually make life much better for this bishop, because all he has to do now is play b5, and he's got a discovered attack on this rook, and the bishop is now, it's a bit better. Let's say it's a bit better. So what it decides to do here is, well, first kicks the knight. So knight now retreats to d7. Queen now drops back, looking at this pawn. So I now slot my bishop into d5, where it becomes a tall pawn. So it becomes part of the pawn structure. Okay, and the pawn's defended. But now you can see these guys are really stuck, and they're forming a kind of a brick wall within White's camp. So now he decides to bring the bishop back around here, which I think is actually a good move, because it had an idea there, but it was just a half-hearted, you know, prod at the rook, and the rook would simply have moved out the way. But here, he's looking at a sensitive square on h7. Now, So my thinking at this point was, my pieces are not well placed to defend my king right now. Okay, these two in particular. This bishop is just kind of joined the pawn chain, right? And it can't go here. And so it has no defensive capability. Likewise, the knight can't go there or there because of white's pawns. Okay, possibly rook e8, knight f8 is sometimes an idea. But I'm thinking, I just need to be careful here. And I don't have enough material on this king side of the board to be sure that I'm going to be safe. King safety always comes first. So I drop my queen into h4, just to prevent any ideas of the bishop like coming down here. Maybe if the queen was somehow on the g file, could pin this pawn. It's a very common pattern. Okay, so now we have a proposed trade of queens. I think I'd already said in the chat, don't trade when you're down material. But this suits me fine. I'm happy to trade. I've got an extra knight. And we have quite a locked pawn structure. Okay, counting this bishop as a tall pawn, right? We don't have that many mobile pawns on white's side. This guy can move forward one. He might get gobbled up. The f-pawn is also a possibility for a pawn break. So now I think, okay, where is the action area on the board? Well, here on the queen side, there's no a-pawn on white's part, so let's get my a-pawn moving. Okay, bishop comes out to here. Kind of quiet, that move, I think. I think maybe, I don't know. Difficult to know where to put this bishop. I mean, there it's potentially still guarding this. I don't know. I think he wants to get it off the back rank in case maybe he needs to move his rook around, which we'll see. So now rook to b5. So what my idea here is, previously I couldn't play a5, right? Because pawn takes, I can't capture with the rook, so I lose my rook. So first, rook to b5, and now if I push takes, and now I'm actually threatening this rook and threatening the back rank to a degree. So we have rook to f1. I now drop my knight back. My knight's doing nothing where it is there. So I'm thinking it could maybe come here, could maybe come there. Bishop comes down now. This bishop has moved a few times, has to be said. And now I push a5. We have rook there, and I push a4, right? I've identified an imbalance that's in my favour, as in I have an a-pawn. And so my plan now is to take advantage of that imbalance that's in my favour and drive it home. Bishop now comes into e7. I'm not concerned about that. I just push a3. We trade bishop for knight. Again, it's all in my favour. I am now a bishop in front, so I'm quite happy. Although white does have an extra pawn. Okay. Now I drop my rook back. So what I'm anticipating is if he doubles up his rooks on the a file, I need to be able to double up my rooks on the a file to defend my pawn. Simple as that. And there we go. And now we have g4 and g6. And now the king mobilizes. So does mine. Okay, king comes forward again. And now I push h5 with the possibility of trading off and opening things up. Now, the more open the board is, the more it's going to favour me with the black pieces because I have an extra bishop, right? But it actually suits white, and this is a good move, suits white to close down the position, and the more closed the position is, the more my bishop actually becomes a pawn rather than a bishop, okay? So now I move my bishop back round, so I'm thinking now I need to come up with some other ideas. So maybe the bishop could come around and attack this guy, for example, okay? But right now he's still attacking this, and this pawn move is prevented. And now h4, good move again. So now there's no kings getting through this hole here. Okay, I can't go here because it's guarded by 2 pawns, and likewise white can't go here because it's guarded by 2 pawns. Right, so the king's prospects there are finished. So king's a powerful piece. Let's mobilise it. Let's move it around to where the action actually is. F4, king e7. Okay, now I drop my bishop into this hole here. So it's kind of just waiting for the opportunity to get behind white's lines here. King comes to attack, and now the bishop drops onto f5. So this bishop has now become a bit better. It really is guarding some key squares on white's half of the board. Okay, king now moves away. Now I'm starting to bring my king round. So my idea now is to slide my king in here. Now I think that maybe white's running out of ideas at this point, because really this king belongs here. You know, so I think the king should have probably stayed on this square where it's defending these pawns, because what he's doing now is he's allowing me maybe to come in with my king. My king wants to get to this square and start gobbling up pawns. So the king moves back and my king moves there. King moves across, my king moves in. King moves again. Okay, so now I can't come in. So now I just move my bishop instead. And at this point, I think I put in the comments that Ed was approaching Zugzwang, which means that a position where he really doesn't want to have to move, but he has to move. You have to make a move on your move. You can't, you know, knock like in dominoes and skip a turn, right? You have to make a move. And now, where's he going to go? Okay, so his king can't go there or there or there, because all those squares are now guarded. So, if he moves a rook, and that's also an option potentially, to move a rook on the back rank. This pawn is stuck and can't advance. But he moves his king, and I think that was a mistake, because it now allows me in. And now, you know, how's he going to protect this pawn? The only real way is, well, rook here, then bishop can block the rook's defense and king can take. The only other option really is to advance the pawn, but then whatever happens, it's going to get taken for free, or even just simply bishop takes, probably even better. So he's in trouble now, and now it simply collapses, because my king can now come here and simply gobble up. Okay, and this was an error. Rushed move in less than 3 seconds, okay? Because c7, the point of c7 was discovered defense by the rook on the pawn. He takes, and there's only a couple more moves, and then he does finally resign. But all in all, very, very solid game. I just think there were some few areas where, I mean, obviously, I think the key one was this f3 move, pushing the pawn here. So let's whiz through back to that point again. This move was made in 11 seconds, okay? And it simply drops the pawn, because knight takes, pawn takes, and queen takes. But then, for some reason, I don't understand the reasoning behind this move either. So really should have just simply recaptured with the pawn and had a very good centre there. And material would have been equal. So, yeah, just, you know, slightly inaccurate play. But for somebody rated just over 900, excellent game. I enjoyed it. I think my opponent enjoyed it. So thanks for that, and I'll see you all soon.